Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the On Deck podcast. I'll be your host, Roberto Pagliero, and today we're going to be breaking down the Alex Bregman contract with the Red Sox, the Giancarlo Stanton injury, and also the Trout position change. So first off, we're going to break down the Alex Bregman contract. The contract is a 3-year, $120 million deal with opt-outs after the first 2 years. With an AAV of around $40 million, he is up there in the top 5 as one of the highest paid players in 2025. He is one of only 5 other players to be getting an AAV of about $40 million. The other names on that list are Shohei Ohtani at $70 million, Juan Soto with his lucrative deal that was signed this offseason at $51 million, Zach Wheeler of the Philadelphia Phillies at $42 million, and tied with Judge at $40 million AAV, which is insane that Alex Bregman belongs with those caliber of players. Don't get me wrong, Alex Bregman is a great, solid baseball player, but he is never going to put up anywhere close to a season that Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, or even Shohei Ohtani will put up hitting-wise. I think with this deal and having the opt-outs is really there for no reason, because unless Bregman puts up, like a 6-7 win season and wins the MVP award, I don't think he's going anywhere just because he has that security with the high AAV contract. And I think he has his position secure at second base, which we'll touch on a little bit later in this discussion. But yeah, the opt-outs to me doesn't really make too much sense, because which teams right now can you think about that are going to need a third baseman? And not just any third baseman, an aging third baseman who's going to be 32 by the start of next season. Unless it's a team like the Detroit Tigers where they don't necessarily have a third baseman. And honestly, that's where I thought he was going to sign if he didn't sign with Houston. That Houston contract that they offered him, I personally think he should have taken, just because you've played there your whole career. You've been one of the faces of the franchise with Altuve, had that dynasty going. Even the whole trash banging conundrum that happened in 2017, I think everybody can put that behind them now, because they did win a legitimate World Series. But at the same time, I can see his perspective. He wants to get paid and, kind of set his family up for the future. So good for Alex Bregman in that perspective. Now, looking at the 2025 projected infield for the Red Sox, you have Devers playing third base, face of the franchise, gonna be a great hitter for a long time. Actually cleaned up his defense a little bit last year. Still not a great defender at third base, but what he brings with the bat is what you really care about. Trevor Story, who needs to just stay on the field, hasn't really produced in that Red Sox uniform after signing that contract. You slot in Alex Bregman there at second base, and then you have Casas at first. That's if the Red Sox don't trade him, but at this point, I think you just run with him there, and hopefully you can finally tap into that power that he has flashed multiple times. Now, with the Bregman signing, one of the questions that I personally had was, what does this mean for the future of Christian Campbell, who is knocking on the door at the Major League roster? Because he is drafted as their second baseman of the future, but now that Bregman is here, basically blocking him for the next 2 to 3 years, what does that look like for the future outlook for Christian Campbell potentially playing the infield somewhere for the Red Sox? Because I've seen him working out in the minors, playing a corner outfield spot, and that could potentially give him an opening in the Red Sox lineup. But in the outfield right now, they're projected to have Duran in left, Rafaela in center, and then Wilyer Abreu in right. And honestly, they have a boatload of outfield prospects in the minors that are coming up, such as Roman Anthony. They also have Marcelo Meyer knocking on the door as well. So they have a bunch of young prospects that are basically blocked by everybody on their infield right now. And their outfield is one of the more interesting ones to pay attention to in this upcoming season. But bringing it back to Alex Bregman playing second base, I think that is a great move for him because you obviously don't want to move Devers into like the permanent DH role because that is the face of your franchise, and you are bringing in an older Bregman to his same position. You don't want to step on Devers' toes and make him feel like he isn't the face of the franchise at this very moment. But for the future of Bregman playing second, I think he plays majority of the games there unless an injury happens. And if there was an injury to happen, I feel like it would be to Trevor Story. Not wishing any bad health upon Story, but he hasn't had the cleanest history of staying on the field with the Red Sox, unfortunately. So that also could be a potential call up for Christian Campbell to play second base if Trevor Story goes down. But I do think at some point during the season, Christian Campbell does get the call up. And there's also that possibility of, looking for a trade to get something for Christian Campbell because Bregman is going to be that second baseman of the near future, hopefully, if he doesn't opt out. But that's also where those opt-outs come into play. If he has a monster year, you've already traded Christian Campbell. You've already just lost out on your second baseman for the potential next 2 to 3 years because you could put Marcelo Meyer there, or if you have a healthy Story, you could move him over to second base where he was playing when Xander Bogaerts was playing shortstop. But that's if Trevor Story is available, and it all just comes down to health with this team. But overall, I love the contract for Bregman as a person, not so much for the Red Sox, but it's good to see that the Red Sox are finally spending and making, impact moves to just a mediocre team in the AL East where, it is one of the more competitive leagues because you have the Yankees up top. The Orioles could also make some noise this year. The Blue Jays are always a solid team. The Rays will do the Rays thing, not have many big names, but will make their games somehow competitive and build the pitching lab out there. But the Red Sox, they can make some noise with a couple of signings, like their Bregman signing and also bringing in Crochet. I'm liking how the Red Sox are looking this year. Now with news from another AL East team, not so good news though. Giancarlo Stanton of the New York Yankees was reportedly dealing with some very high amounts of pain in both of his elbows, which Aaron Boone had reported on Sunday that it's some tennis elbow, or also known as tendonitis, that he's dealing with and hasn't swung a bat in 3 to 4 weeks. And the question is, will he be okay for opening day? And Aaron Boone kind of was like, we'll see how Big G's feeling, but in my opinion, I don't think he's going to be ready at all for opening day. With me being a Yankees fan, injuries and Giancarlo Stanton kind of go hand in hand. There's going to always be something that comes up with him during the season or in the preseason. And honestly, it's just part of the Stanton experience at this point. It kind of sucks because Stanton was going to be slotted in the 4 to 5 spot in the lineup. And honestly, without him, I wouldn't be as scared attacking that lineup. If you have someone after, I think it'd probably be after Bellinger or Goldschmidt in that maybe even 4 to 6 range. But Yeah, hopefully it's nothing serious. It's just a couple weeks after opening day begins, so he's able to get some rehab games in there. I guess the only positive of this injury being before the season is that it technically is before the season starts, and he'd only potentially be missing a couple weeks. And I want to be hopeful that this is the only injury that Stanton has this season, but we know it'll probably be a pulled hamstring or something lower body, because that's where majority of his injuries are. Because I'm sure everyone has seen the clips where he's running around the bases and it looks like he is putting in zero effort. But it should be interesting how the lineup shapes up, because the depth on the bench isn't that great. According to roster research right now, it is Alex Jackson as the backup catcher, DJ LeMahieu, Oswald Peraza, and Trent Grisham, who also Boone had come out to say that he had a strained thigh from a workout, but should be okay when spring training games come around in a couple weeks. But should be interesting who takes in that DH role. Do you see a couple Judge DH days, or do we see some Goldschmidt DH days, get him off his feet, get Bellinger playing first base, and then you move Trent to center field? Or do we potentially see a spring training heater from somebody, and you ride that heater until Stanton comes back? Should be interesting, but unfortunate news coming out of the Yankees camp in that regard. And the last thing that we're going to touch on is something that should have happened a few years ago. And when people mention the name Mike Trout, we all think of, one of the greatest players of this generation, multiple time MVP, most likely a first ballot Hall of Famer, hopefully unanimous, fingers crossed. But one of the other things that often comes up in that conversation is his ability to stay on the field. And Mike Trout hasn't really done that lately. He hasn't played more than 82 games in 3 of the past 4 seasons with a multitude of injuries. And personally, I think a majority of those injuries have come from playing center field, which is one of the more physically demanding spots on the field outside of catcher. And a lot of his injuries have been lower body injuries, such as the calf strain, and I think most recently the ACL surgery. But now, hopefully, this move to right field, which Trout had brought up to management, will be able to preserve his health, because, man, who doesn't want to watch a full season of Mike Trout? He had also stated that there would be, the odd occasion where he would need to play center field, but he said that his main focus was to, perfect learning and playing right field this season. A report had also come out that, I wasn't too familiar about, but Joe Maddon had brought up Trout moving to right field 3 seasons ago when Maddon was the manager, and Trout had declined this move. But, as Trout gets older and he's realized that, he's had a lot more injuries since then, he felt that it was best to move to right field, and now gets a whole spring to, ramp up to get ready for that position. And honestly, if there was one thing I could ask for this season, it would be to see Trout win one more MVP. Again, one of the greatest players that I've personally ever watched in this generation. And I just want to see him be healthy and producing at a high level. Because every time he's been on the field for the 82 or less games that it's been, he's been putting up MVP numbers. And I just want to see him healthy in right field. And, hopefully this move helps him out. Because if there's a healthy Trout in right field, that team is just automatically 10 times better than it is. I know the Anthony Rendon move and that whole contract is a mess, but The Angels would be a lot better with a healthy Trout on the field. One last thing, as I was recording this, news has just come in from the New York Mets saying that Frankie Montas has suffered a lat strain and will be out for 6 to 8 weeks. My initial reaction to that is that's going to be a massive blow to their rotation, as after you have Senga and Minaya, Montas was supposed to slot in there as the 3, maybe the 4 behind Paul Blackburn. But now you have Clay Holmes that's going to slot in there. It's going to be his first year being a starter. Should be interesting how that plays out after being a reliever for so long. And then you have Griffin Canning, who isn't expected to do much, but might be in a larger role this season with that injury to Montas, because I think they have him slotted to come back end of May, beginning of June. So that could be a big hit for them. And their pitching was supposed to be just okay this season, in my opinion. But Montas was supposed to be that guy to eat innings, put up a low 4s kind of ERA, just eat innings for them and just give that bullpen a rest, because man, that the playoff run that they had last year with Edwin Diaz pitching 2 innings on back-to-back days was insane. But it should be interesting how we see that Mets rotation play out. Maybe they bring up some of their guys from AAA for spot starts, or maybe even start with them in the rotation, depending on what the health of Paul Blackburn or Griffin Canning is, and seeing the results from Clay Holmes as a starter maybe a couple times through the rotation. That'll wrap up today's podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to drop a comment, see what your thoughts are on the moves. I know I'm on that Bregman news a little late. I just wanted to touch up on it, see if you guys also agreed with me. But I'm going to be signing out from here. If there's any sort of news that comes out in the next couple of days, I'm going to be on it. Make sure I get everything that's going on around the league. But make sure to tell your friends about this podcast. Share it with your friends, family, anybody that, has an opinion on baseball. See if we can interact and start a community here. But appreciate you all for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one.